announce you all.
Excuse me, Mike.
Yeah.
I need to leave earlier tonight. So do you mind if I can tell the story not as the last one?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you go number 2?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, okay.
If she has to leave early, I can go. I can be second.
Pass you over.
Right, so let's get the intro done. I'll do the
Ladies and gentlemen,
oh, he's gone. Can
So
anybody else hear him? No,
ladies and
so
gentlemen,
ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, assembled come to Storytelling Cafe, and it is the other Sunday, and it is our worldwide story round, hosted by the amazing Mike Rust, who just hosted a fantastic festival, which I nearly got to. But I would have melted in the heat. But apart from that, life is good. I might well disappear because I'm working from a field as usual.
Right, John, I'm going to... John, you're breaking up. I'm going to take over. Thanks for doing the intro.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you're going to break up in a minute.
Okay, I'm handing over to Mike. What we've got coming up Tuesday, Young Tellers, 5 o'clock. Friday, 6 o'clock, Celluloid Window. I'm off. Over to Mike.
Good evening, everybody. Oh, wait. Hello, wait. Mike, you've just come in. Like David, you look as if you're in a taxi. I don't know. Where are you going, David? Where are you traveling from to? No, he's gone. No, he's there again. Right. Good evening.
I'll be home in 10 minutes. So if I can go as soon as I get home.
Okay. Thank you
And
very
I'm
much.
not at the steering wheel, so it's perfectly safe.
Good. Yeah, I can tell that because you're in an English car or a British car. You're obviously not on the Europe, or you're not in America or places like that. Okay. Otherwise, you would have to be driving. Right. So good evening, everybody. You can see by the fact that by my face and Keith's face that we spent a whole weekend at a festival and we all got bright red faces and everything else. Okay, so that's fine. The batting order, we're going to start with Baba, then we're going to go to Maria because she needs to go early, so she goes number 2. Keith, you'll be number 3 now, yeah? Put your hand up if you can hear me. Valentina, you go 4, and I'll take it from there. Right, lovely to see you all again. I hope you have a lovely evening. I'm not going to go anywhere until everybody's told a story, wants to tell a story, and all the other bits and pieces to it. I've got a message from Amy. Amy is locked down on COVID. She's living in a shed in the middle of Bishop's Castle in Shropshire, and she's not allowed out. And it looks like she's got it's her first time, and that's really, really bad. And so we wish her luck, and I hope she's listening. Amy, just get yourself better as quick as you can. Right, I'm going to go to Baba first. It's everybody as normal, just mute yourselves, which I see you've all done, and then we'll sort out a batting order. So over to you, Baba, in America.
a long time ago is when my 2 short stories took place. But first, I want to share something. We're always talking about the importance of recording stories and how stories reflect the culture and attitudes of a people. Here in the U.S., African Americans are often accused of having poor English, which is, well, we are no more poor English-speaking, American-speaking people than anybody else. However, there's this resurgent not to use dialect or modified English. I'm sharing that because Friday I had the wonderful opportunity of sharing stories with a group of second graders in what they call summer enrichment or summer school. And I had a story where I did Crocodile and the Monkey, and there's dialect. And I turned to one of the kids who was doing the story with me, and I said, everybody. He went, everybody. I said, no, everybody. He went, everybody. I said, class, help me out, everybody. And every last one of them went, everybody. I could not for the life of me to get them to speak dialogue, even though I explained that's how the story was taking place. To me, that is an indication of how pride in one's heritage or culture, or understanding that everyone doesn't have to speak the same way to be intelligent or understood. Anyhow, after that little diatribe, my first story, and they're both going to be very quick stories, is 2 ways to count to 10. Now, when this story was originally told, it was a story about an Oba, a king, seeking a proper suitor for his daughter to be married. I've altered the story a little bit because in the United States we're going through a lot of factions and this and that and a lot of clashing. And in some worldview, we're not the United States, we're the un-United States of America. Hopefully that will not last. So this story, I've modified it to talk about, well, you don't have to do everything the way everybody else does it in order to get the same results. So this is a story about 2 ways to count to 10. So you see, there was a time when an Oba, a king, he had no heir, but he wanted an heir, a proper heir to his throne for when the time came for him to join the ancestors. So he sent messages far and near and far. And that he was going to, he wanted everyone to gather around, and anyone that could thrust his spear, which was a mighty spear, we're talking about Thor-level spear, anyone who could thrust his spear into the air and count to 10 before it landed would inherit half his kingdom now and the rest when he joined the ancestors. Oh, and the people came from near and far and near. And this is before mankind appeared. There was the antelope, there was the gaboon, there was the baboon. All the animals gathered around to thrust the spear. So one of the first animals to thrust the spear was a great big gorilla. And the gorilla took the spear and he threw it in the air. And he went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoa! The spear landed just in front of him, almost slicing him in half, but barely missing. So he was down for the count. Another animal stood. The giraffe said, I can thrust the spear. And the giraffe grabbed the spear and with his long neck threw the spear up in the air and began to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom! The spear just barely missed the giraffe. So he was out of the count. And this went on and on and on and on and on and on. And well, you get the picture. And then finally, a gazelle appeared. And the gazelle looked at the spear and he said, Almighty Oba, Almighty King, just to be sure, you said anyone that can thrust your spear up into the air and count to 10 before it lands would inherit half of your kingdom now and the other half when you join the ancestor. And the king said, yes, that's what I said. And so the gazelle said, okay. And so taking its antlers and unlocking it onto the spear, it thrust the spear up into the air and went 5, 10. Shoo! The king looked at the gazelle and said, oh, wise you are, wise you are. And the people said, no, he did not count to 10. He went 5, 10. The king said he could have gone 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I never said anyone had to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this gazelle was wise enough to understand you don't have to do everything the same way. I think he is wise enough to inherit half my kingdom now and the other half when I join the ancestors. And so, that's the way the story goes. Oops, I stepped on a pen, the pen bent, and that's the way that story went. And my second story, which I said was going to be brief. My second story is this. Anansi loved to eat. It was his 3 most favorite things in the world. He loved to eat, he loved to eat, he loved to eat, and he loved to eat some more. That's right, Three most favorite thing in the world. He loved to eat, he loved to eat, he loved to eat, he loved to eat some more. If he wasn't eating, he'd just finish eating or he's getting ready to eat. So one day, Anansi decided he was in the mood for fish, but he had no money. But he knew the fishermen who lived nearby went out early in the morning to go fishing. So, even though he was not a morning person, Anansi got up and he went down to join the fishermen. He said, "Fisherman, I want to help you fish." And the fisherman knew Anansi did not like to work. So he said, "Okay, Anansi, you can help me fish. This morning I'm preparing to go out to sea with my net. I'm going to get very, very, very tired. But you know what? I'll do all the work." Anansi said, No. We don't have time for you to get tired and do all the work at the same time. I tell you what, you get tired and I'll do the work. For Anansi's mind, the quicker the work got out of the way, the quicker he could make money, the quicker he could buy fish. And so the fisherman said, "Well, if you insist." And the fisherman sat under a tree, and it got hot. He went, "Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I'm so tired." And I said, Yeah. You're tired. You're tired. I got work to do. I got work to do. And so he mended the nets. He got them ready to go fishing, but it was too late to go fishing for that day. So the fisherman said, "I will see you in the morning, Anansi." And the next morning they met, and the fisherman said, "Anansi, yesterday you did all the work, and I got so tired. Today I will do the work, and you get tired." Anansi did not want to be accused of not doing his fair share. He said, No. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to trick me. No, you get tired. You be lazy. I will do all the work. For in his head, he thought the quicker he did the work, the quicker he get his money, the quicker he could buy his fish. And so once again, Anansi put the nets in the boat, prepared to push the boat out, because not everywhere do they row. Push the boat out. The fishermen got in the boat. They pulled the nets in. And at the end of the day, they had a long haul. But it was too late to count the fish, so they left them in the water. The next day, Anansi and the fishermen got together for yet a third day. And the fisherman said, "Oh, Anansi, for the last 2 days you have done all the work. Well, I got so tired. Today I will do the work and you get tired." "No, I'm not falling for your trick. You go sit under the tree, you get tired. I will count all the fish, I will put them in the pots, and then we will go to market and sell them." And so while Anansi sorted all the fish and put it in their various pots, the fisherman sat on the tree and went, "I'm so tired. Oh, I'm so tired. Then they got all the pots together and they went off to market, where they sold all of the fish. Every last head, tail, and in between. They sold it all. The fish was gone. The fisherman turned around and gave Anansi his money, his dinar. And Anansi looked at the coin and said, "Oh yes, now I can go buy the fish." There was one problem. All the fish had now been sold. Anansi had a handful of money, but nothing to buy to feed his stomach for that evening. And as Anansi made his way back home, he's so tired, and he was hungry too. And the lesson of this story is, don't be greedy. For when you think you're outwitting those who outwit you, you come out the fool. And the follow-up story to this is how a fool and his money get separated. But that, as a wise griot is known to say, is a story for another time. Asante.
Oh, thank you very much, Baba. Loving that story. It's really nice to have a few knocking around the place. There's a never trouble troubles who troubles you. There's another one. Right, so we're going to go to Maria because she's got to rush off, and I bet she's going to look beautiful and put a posh frock on and be taken out by a handsome young man. Is that right? What are you doing later? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Excuse me, Mike.
You're going to, some young handsome man's going to come and take you out later, so you have to be first. Is that right?
No, no. In Italy it's 8 o'clock. It's an hour later, so I need to go out. But I wanted to share a story with you tonight.
Well, I'm ever so pleased to come. We want to know more about this handsome young man at some point. Okay, I'm sure you've got one somewhere.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're going to go to Italy. It's 8 o'clock there. Have you got it? Yeah. Is it really hot in Italy? Are you having the heat wave we're having?
Yeah, it's really hot, and it's not raining. It's haven't been raining since weeks, so it's really hard, and it's one of the most heat summers.
Yeah.
So
you see my glass. See, in our country, they say you've got to keep rehydrated. So you've got to drink lots of liquids. It's called beer.
okay.
Okay, but you can't.
Okay.
You're not allowed to drink until 7 o'clock in the evening. Okay, so it's just 7 o'clock. So we're going to go to Italy, to Maria.
Yeah.
And she's going to tell us all about a handsome young man another night.
Yeah. So behind me, as you can see, there is a chamber of a castle, and the story I'm talking to you is about the girl in the painting. This girl was named Gwendalina, and she was the daughter of Ugolinuccio, the Lord of Montebello. Montebello was a village, and there was a castle, a huge castle. So Gwendalina suffered from albinism, which is a rare condition characterized by the absence of pigments in skin and hair. So Gwendalina had pale skin and very light blonde hair. In those days, I mean medieval period, albinism was believed to be something connected to witchcraft and to dark magic. Therefore, Ugolinuccio and his wife hid her daughter since she was born to protect her from superstitions and opinions of people of the village. So Gwendalina was not allowed to leave the castle, and she was constantly supervised by 2 guards. Gwendalina's mother thought that if her daughter had darker hair, she would have been accepted by the society. So she decided to dye Gwendalina's hair with a black color. But Gwendalina's hair didn't turn black. The hair turned a strange light blue color. So from that day, Gwendalina was called Azzurrina, which in Italian means light blue. As you can see in the picture, she's represented with light blue hair. One day of summer solstice, Azzurrina was playing alone in the castle. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think Azzurrina was playing with? You can also write in the comment. She could play hide and seek or with a rope. What do you think? She was just a young girl. Mike, do you want to guess?
She was playing with her doll.
A doll? No. She was playing with a ball, like this, a cloth ball. So Gwendalina threw the ball inside the castle, but suddenly the ball fell into the basement chamber of the castle under a trapdoor where the dungeons were. So the girl followed the ball, descending a small staircase, and suddenly the guards heard a cry coming from the chamber. They rushed into the dungeons of the castle looking for Azzurrina, but they didn't find neither the girl nor the ball. and they never did. So it's believed that Azurena's spirit dwells in the castle still today, and every day of summer solstice, the visitors can hear the cry of a girl inside the dungeons of the castle. The legend of Azulena has been handed down for many years, and one day it reached me when I was a child. And now I'm sharing this story with you, and hopefully you can share the story with others. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Maria. Now, I asked the same question always, so I'm going to ask it again. You speak Italian? Yeah, that's your mother language. You speak English? Your English is very good. It's the diction, it's the clarity of the words that you have to work on. So what other languages do you speak?
I'm just focused on learning English because I'm fond of English. I really love your language. So I can't speak any other language. I just try to watch films in English and to have lessons with Manuela, my teacher. And so I'm trying to improve my English skills.
Well, you'll have to come and visit us either here in England or America. In America, they nearly speak English. It's not quite right. It's nearly this thing. Okay, in Canada and other places.
Does that mean I'm bilingual?
No.
Yes.
You speak American and Canadian. That doesn't count. Okay?
Oh, trilingual.
Anyway, thank you for being here. Go and have your food and calm down, because I know that and cool down, I know you're in a really hot place today. It's the temperatures for us in Europe are really, really hot. So take care and do the things you have to do. And thank you for being here. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
So Keith, so how many languages do you speak? Black Country and English?
Yeah, French, but only in the present tense, like pirates.
Right. Okay. So you're coming from Wolverhampton?
Yes, indeed. Not originally, but and I got a story in it from Italy.
Okay.
And it's the story of the blue violin. But we have to go to the town of Cremona in northern Italy in the last quarter of the 18th century. Now imagine, if you will, a huge square with cobbles and a magnificent church at the far end. On either side there are stone arches, and above those arches are the rooms where merchants ply their trade. And it's early in the morning, the sun's just creeping over the buildings, and people are moving about at the start of the day when the quiet is interrupted by the clatter of wooden wheels and the hooves as a caravan hoves into sight. And the caravan is driven by a man in a white shirt, a white shirt and red trousers and a red beret. And next to him is a woman in a white blouse and a red skirt and a red bandana. And they stop in the middle of the square and start unloading their wares. And there are pots and pans, there are pegs, there's lucky heather for over your door. And people are walking past and they're looking and they're sort of only taking half an interest, but until a small boy steps out onto a platform at the back of the caravan and he holds a blue violin to his chest. And he begins, excuse me, to draw the bow back and forth across the strings. And the music soars around the square and soars into the air. And a crowd gathers, listening to the music. And at the back of the crowd, there is an old man, an instrument maker, and he's delighted because it's a long time since he's heard a violin play so beautifully and by one so young. And of course, as people are listening and they notice, well, perhaps they do need a pot or a pan, and you can't have too many pegs, can you? And heather's always a good idea to put above your door for luck, and business is brisk. But above the square, in an office, is a merchant in a long robe with a fur collar and a gold chain. And he has a quill in his hand and he's working on his ledger, a man whose only talent is to get people to part with their money. And hearing the music, he stands up angrily and he slams the window shut. Now, a rumour begins to spread in the town of Cremona. The violin must be magic. For whoever saw a blue violin? And the boy, he is so young. That violin is magic. And the people of Cremona rather like the idea of a magic violin being in their town. Now we go to night time and there's a moon in the sky lighting the square. But the only sound in the square are the families sleeping in the caravan. But a figure dressed in black is walking down the arches. No longer a robe and a gold chain. And he makes his way across the square and he reaches into the caravan and he takes the violin and the bow, walks away from the square, climbs on his horse and rides out of the town. He rides out of the town into a woodland and he rides through the woodland until he comes to a clearing. And it is clear and the moon is up. But even so, he looks around to make sure no one is about. As he climbs off his horse and he takes the violin and he holds it on his chest as the boy had done, and he begins to move the bow across the strings, and the sound is hideous. He's startled. This is supposed to be a magic violin. He starts to move his fingers on the neck like the boy had done, and the sound is worse. He becomes furious. He grits his teeth. He's breathing heavily. He rakes the bow back and forth across the strings. The sound is abominable. And in his anger, he takes the neck of the violin and he smashes it against a tree and throws it into the undergrowth. He stands there for a moment, getting his breath back, controlling his anger, and he climbs back on his horse and he rides back into the town. The next morning, the quiet of the square is broken by a small boy crying, by his parents angrily packing up their wares and slamming the shutters, and a crowd gathered. They are appalled. For soon this family will travel across northern Italy, and the tale will be that the Cremona has someone who steals a small boy's violin. The shame! And there's a babble of voices as their concern raises up. But they part, for the old man is walking forward with a violin case. And he reaches the family, and the father goes to speak, but his wife touches his arm. And the old man opens the case, and there inside is a beautiful, shiny, brand new brown violin. And he takes it out and the bow, and he hands it to the boy. And the boy sniffs back a tear and holds the violin. And he begins to draw the bow back and forth across the strings. And the music swirls around the square and soars into the air. And the crowd clap and cheer with both relief and delight. But above the square, a window slams shut. Thank you.
Oh, Keith. So you'll be up at Whitby this year?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So Whitby, for those of you who don't know, is the week-long folk festival on the coast in England here in the United Kingdom. 650 events, and all you have to do is to go there and tell lies in pubs, and you get paid for it. It's easy. Absolutely no problem at all. There's music and there's song, and it's one of the great institutions of our country here. I have a Lucy Taylor that's come up on my screen tonight I haven't seen before. So welcome, Lucy. Can you unmute for just a second?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, and I have a story when it's possible.
Absolutely. And where are you from?
I live in London.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to go to Valentina next because she lives in Canada and are you 100% blind, Valentina, or she's pretty blind, Lucy. So if you would go after Valentina, that would be wonderful if that's possible. Yeah. Lucy? I'm going to go Valentina, then Lucy. And Lucy, could you go back mute, please?
Okay.
Valentina.
So can you hear me? Because
Canada?
great, I'm having trouble with my internet, so I don't cut out. And yeah, I am totally blind, but I've managed to live a normal life and mess it up just like everyone else. So anyway.
I can argue about that. I bet you haven't messed yours up as much as I've messed mine up someday. So I wouldn't worry about that. Okay. Anyway, before we go further, have you got a seeing eye dog?
No, I'd rather have people talk to me rather than my dog.
All right. Okay. Puts me in my place. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So
some people like to
go on.
Some people like to have a Porsche and other people just do with a VW or something. So I just use my white cane. But anyway, this story just really touched my fantasy. Like in Canada, we're having a problem with climate change like everyone else is. And one of the things that has been in focus is the plight of the bees and butterflies. And so people are planting milkweed and things to provide places for monarch butterflies so that we don't lose them. And I've always liked butterflies. I have some pins and different things, in the shape of butterflies. And I find them so intriguing because they signify transformation and metamorphosis. And this story is about transformation and love. It comes from Japan, so I hope I do it justice. Once, in a busy Japanese city, there lived a merchant who had an apprentice. And this apprentice was a very bright young man. He learned quickly, he could talk to people well, and he showed that he had all the skills that would make a good merchant. He had every hope of having a prosperous life. And just as he was on the cusp of becoming a merchant for himself, all of a sudden he packed everything up, gave his belongings away, and lived as a recluse. He disappeared, as far as most people knew. But he had a beloved sister who knew that he had gone to live among the tombs and be a caretaker. And so he lived that way for years, and only his sister and her son would come to visit him from time to time. And life went by, and the sister's son grew up, but in the meantime, Takahama got old. But still, every so often, his sister came and they would sit and sometimes they would talk and sometimes they'd just be quiet. But the sister and the nephew came regularly. And as it happened, 30 to 40 years later, Takahama got old. And then he got ill. And then he couldn't even walk. So, of course, his sister and the nephew, who was now a young man, came to look after him. And as he lay on his bed, Takahama asked for the window to be opened so he could get some fresh air and smell the spring flowers. And the flower scent wafted in, the cherry blossoms and the magnolias. And it felt so peaceful in that quiet room where he lay on his bed. But he didn't get better. He got worse. And the fever came. But he still asked for the window to be open. And one day, a white butterfly fluttered in, and it would flutter around Takahama's face, rest on his pillow, and fly around. Now, the nephew was bothered by this butterfly. Why should we have an insect in the house? How strange is that this butterfly keeps coming back? And no matter what the nephew did, the butterfly would fly away and come back, circle Takahama's face, and rest on his pillow before it flew away. And the days went by, and Takahama gave up the ghost, and he died. And sure enough, the butterfly flew in that day and circled Takahama's face again and flew out the window. And the sister said to her son, "Would you please do me a favor and see where this butterfly goes?" Now, the nephew was a respectful son. He thought it was a strange request, but he followed the butterfly, and it fluttered to and fro among the tombs and back and forth, and the young man followed it, and then it landed on a tomb and disappeared. So he went back and he told his mother, and the mother said, she said, "So this is interesting." She said, "So which tomb did the butterfly land on? Did you happen to notice a name?" And the young man said, "Yes, it was the tomb of Akiko." And the sister nodded her head, and she said, "And is there anything else that you noticed?" And the young man said, "Yes." He said, "As a matter of fact, the butterfly wasn't so strange, but there was a fresh bouquet of flowers that looks like it's been watered." And he said the rest of the tomb was almost covered with overgrown weeds and moss. And he said, but there was this strange bouquet of flowers that looks like it was just put there yesterday. Said his mother. "I know," she said. Akiko was the love of Takahama's life. And just as they were about to get married, she suddenly got very ill and died. And so Takahama has been here taking care of her grave all these years. And that white butterfly, well, son, pay attention. That was Akiko's soul. She waited for him. And now they can be in love and transformed in their next life. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you very much, Valentina. And
Thank you, Valentina. That was great.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, you said to me that you'd be here with another story, but you didn't say how lovely the story would be. And thank you very much. And I know you spent 2 weeks sorting it all out and everything else. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
The internet's going out.
Okay, I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Now, Lucy, I think it's the first time.
Thank you, Valentina. That was beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So, Lucy, tell me a bit more about yourself.
Yes, I live in London, and I do love storytelling. I write short stories,
Right.
I think it's one of the most beautiful arts.
By some of the most beautiful people.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Well, I'd love to meet a stranger is a friend I haven't met yet. It's the saying we have here. I'm sat up here in Shropshire. Shropshire is on the English-Welsh border, about halfway up on the English side. And we have festivals up here with very talented people who go to them, and people like me who check the toilets are okay. Okay, so over to you, Lucy.
Thank you very much. Let me just double check that. Flooding. Yes, it has been raining for the last 10 days in a row. Yes, the houses and the buildings were becoming flooded. And I called the emergency services and I said, "Help me, I'm drowning." And they said, "Are you really drowning? Is the water up to your neck?" And I said, "No, it's up to my waist." And they put the phone down. I was desperate. So I opened the front door of my house, and there I saw the most beautiful man rowing a boat. And he said to me, "Would you like a ride? The flooding is going to get worse, and you might die in your own home." And I said, "Yes, thank you." Little did I know that I might be getting into even more trouble. I climbed onto the beautiful man's boat. I sat down, and he was standing, rowing the boat. He seemed strong. He was wearing white flowing trousers and white flowing shirt, and his hair was blue. And it didn't seem like he was dyed. And I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Thunder." When he said thunder, it made me think of Greek gods. And I was feeling excited about the unknown. And then he looked at me and said, "And what's your name?" And I said, "Rose." "Okay, Rose, I'm taking you to a safe place where there's no flooding. And it shouldn't take too long." And I said, "Thank you." I believed every word he said. About half an hour later, we arrived to a beach. It was a beautiful beach, and it was deserted. And we climbed down the boat, and Thunder seemed very excited. "Oh, I love the beach. I love the ocean. So much water." Then we were walking for a bed, and he held my hand. And he looked at me and said, "Rose, do you find me beautiful?" And I said, "Yes, very much so." And he said, "Can I kiss you?" I thought it was an unusual request, but we just kissed. And in that moment, my life completely changed. I became a body of water. I could see my hands, they were water. My legs, they were water. Thunder was also made of water. And I screamed, "What have you done? Where is my body? Are you a demon?" And Thunder said, "It's all for the greater good." At this point, I saw thousands of water bodies emerging from the sea. There were men, there were women, but they seemed happy. And they said to Thunder, "Thunder, a new convert. Well done." And I screamed again and I said, "Can anybody tell me what's going on? Please." And they said to Thunder, "Tell her we can't stand her screams anymore." So Thunder held my hand, made of water and said, "You, with us, you are going to be part of the raindrops that fall in our planet and are flooding houses and everything. You will never get your body back, and you will have a new job, that of flooding." And I screamed again, "But why? Why? Why do you want to destroy people and buildings?" And Thunder said, "Because we believe that water is superior to solids. So I am now part of a group that is made of water and is made of raindrops. And the group was growing. Thunder and lightning are leaders. They had powers, and they were able to recruit many new members to the group. Thunder made sure that every day there was hard rain falling on the planet, and that many places were becoming flooded. We were now thousands of people, all making the planet very flooded indeed. And sometimes we would chant, "One day this planet will be all water." I became used to my new life, because what did I have to lose? I was thinking, okay, I'm made of water, but I'm still alive. I still have my memories. So I decided to accept my fate. Thank you.
Well, that was lovely. Thank you very much, Lucy. And can I ask you, did you write that yourself, or was that something you got from someone else?
I wrote, sorry, I wrote it myself, yes. It's
Yes.
an original.
Absolutely. And is it okay for other people who have heard it here to tell that story?
To tell that story, well, as long as they, they credit me, yes, that's fine.
Yeah. Yes, that's fine.
Credit me.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they will. Okay. Well, I do this every other Sunday. So I've been here this Sunday. I'll miss next Sunday, and I'll do the Sunday after. And I think I've been doing it all through the pandemic, so it's probably 2 or 3 years now. So you are very welcome to come, and I hope you will come again and join us.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So I've got Phil next.
It's nice and warm up here in Scotland as it is with you lot. It's raining. What a surprise.
Yeah, you're raining. You're
It's
not
raining.
raining. It's Diana, is it raining where you are? God.
She's just over the road.
Oh, I don't bloody believe it.
It's nice and cool.
You're going to tell me all the whiskey's dried up and you're drinking
No, the
vodka
whiskey's
as well.
definitely not dried up. Campbell Loch is still full of whiskey. I wish I could drink it dry. Check it up, Andy Stewart. I'm going to tell you a story about a heed. This story, once upon a time, this story happened, nay in my day, maybe nay in your day, but it certainly happened in somebody's day. And this minister, he used to elky Sunday walk in amongst the gravestones as he practiced his sermons and everything like that. So he'd do sermon in the morning, he would, if you didn't do it quite right, he would go out and walk around by the gravestones in the afternoon to get ready for his sermon in the evening. And this particular day, back in his day, he came across this tomb, and lying at the side of the tomb was a skull. And before he could stop himself from saying it, the words come out of his mouth, and our ministers came, nae to make personal comments. You just didn't make personal comments, and he did. Michty me for a grand set of teeth. And the skull spoke back and goes, aye, his teeth has done me fine. Well, I think he was more shocked at the fact he'd made the personal comment or the fact that the skull had spoke to him. But afore long, that skull and that minister were cracking away in a great conversation. And it turned out that the skull was the minister of the same kirk from many, many years ago. And they blethered away and they blethered away, and the skull says to the minister, about this sermon, and the minister tells him about that sermon, and then the minister says, tell you fit, why didn't you come for dinner next week? And the skull says, aye, that'll be fine, what about next Sunday? And it was agreed that the skull would come to the minister's house, to the manse, for his dinner next Sunday. Now the minister lived alone, be his housekeeper, and the housekeeper was what is, because this minister never invited Omri for a meal. He didn't say if I was inviting, he just said, he had somebody coming for tea, for dinner next Sunday. So the housekeeper was all excited and got the most favourite food and the best china out and the best silverware and the tablecloth and the fancy candlesticks on the table, because there was a guest coming to dinner. And the minister standing there in front of the fire on the Sunday night, hands on his back, warming his behind, waiting for the visitors to arrive. And he says to the housekeeper, is there Omri coming down the drive? The housekeeper looks up and goes, no, nobody. And she's beginning to fret because her food's beginning to spoil. And you sure there's somebody coming for dinner? Aye, he'll be here. And she looks out again and she goes, well, they're saying it looks like a neep rolling down the driveway. That's him. Open the doors and let him in, says the minister. And a wee kerfuffle started as the skull rolled into the house and was picked up and popped up on the table. And the skull says to the minister, just you chawa, that food's nae any use to me, but I'll be quite happy to sit and blether to you as you hae your dinner. And they had their dinner, and the two ministers blethered away, just exactly the same as if it was two farmers that were black reeking and discussing what the price of diesel's doing to their livelihoods just now, or twa butchers were speaking about how far you could get the best steaks just now. And at the end of the night, the skull went away and says, tell you fit, you come to me next week. And the minister says, what far do you bide? Well, just you going round the corner for that tomb that you met me at, and round the back of the trees, you'll find an avenue and just you follow that. So the minister potters about for a week. And the following week, he gets all dressed up and he gets on his horse and he goes round by the tomb and round by the trees, and here's an avenue that he had never ever seen before. And he sets off along it. And a wee while down the road, he comes across this twa men in a quarry shuffling sand. And they were working awful hard, but the pile of sand was never getting any smaller. And he shouts over to them, but they completely ignore him and he keeps shuffling away, and his horse just trots off down the road. And a wee while further along the road, he comes to this wee cottage, and here's this old wifey standing outside the wee cottage, and this young, beautiful woman is beating the living daylights out of her. And the minister's really perturbed about this and goes, got to do something about this, but his horse was saying, no it. And he just took off down the road, and away he went. And a wee bit farther down the road, they come to another house, and standing outside, there was a farmer's wife with her mouth gaping wide open, and mice and rats coming in and out of her mouth as if it was natural and if it ever mice and rats should be. And the minister was mere perturbed himself, but there was absolutely no way his horse was stopping. It took off and away they went. And down the road, they come to where the skull bides. And in they went to his house, and sure enough, there was a grand feast for him. The skull didn't hear anything again. So the skull, the heed, whatever you want to call him, and the minister blethered away again. They got on grand and they started using. And after a wee while, the minister says, I have got to ask you, when I come up the road, I come across the quarry and there was this two men shuffling sand and the pile of sand that was never ever getting any smaller. I shouted out to them, but they completely ignored them. The minister goes, that's a parable. You see, that two men both worked very, very hard on Saturdays and Sundays and completely and utterly ignored the Sabbath. And that's their punishment. They've got to work forevermore. And that pile of sand will never stop growing until they learn their lesson. They haven't learned it yet. He says, oh, but a wee bit farther on, he says, I come to this woman getting beat by this young girl. Aye, quite savagely. It's another parable, says the heed. You see, that young woman was orphaned, and the old wifey took her in, but she was coarse and she was cruel and she beat her regularly. So for every stroke that she struck the young woman strikes her 100 times over. The minister's still not very sure about this, and then he says, "Oh, but a wee bit farther on," she says, "I come to this woman with her mouth gaping open and mice and rats coming in and out of it freely." And he goes, "Aye, that's another parable." You see, a young poor woman came to her years and years ago and asked her for a penny's worth of milk for her starving baby. And she went and gave her milk that she was about to throw out. And the reason why she was about to throw that milk out was because a moose had died in it, and that milk was poisoned and it killed her baby. So her punishment is mice and rats coming in and out of her mouth forevermore. And the minister says, "Well, I'm not just quite sure about these parables, but I'm sure I can make a sermon out of them some way." And they went to leave, and the heed goes, "Now stop before you go. Pick up that black sack over there and put it on your saddle, because you might think you've only been here for a couple of hours, but you've actually been here for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. When you come out of the valley, the avenue at the end there, you are going to come to a massive, great big city, and you are going to find great big tall buildings, and you're going to hear noises you've never ever heard before. You're going to see trains on steel tracks, and you get to see metal things that fly in the sky, and you'll be absolutely amazed, because it's hundreds and hundreds of years since you left your parish." And the minister goes, "Nah." But he picks up the bag anyway, and he puts it on his horse, and he takes off. And sure enough, as he's going back down the avenue, he passes the woman with the mice and rats. He passes the woman getting beat by the young woman, and he passes the two workers shuffling the sand in the quarry. And he comes out the end of the avenue, and horse rears up, because they've got this massive, massive, great big city before him with tall buildings and planes flying through the air and trains and everything he's never seen before. And the horse is just absolutely spooked out with it. And to be honest, so is the minister. And he had told him that when he gets near the village, he'll see an old woman at the side of the road throwing out a basin of water, and ask her about the minister that disappeared hundreds of years ago. So he stops his horse beside her and he says, "Excuse me, have you ever heard of a minister from round about here that went missing hundreds of years ago?" And she goes, "Aye, I think so. As far as I mind, my granny told me about that minister, and her granny told her, and her granny told her before her. So, aye, you're right enough. It would be hundreds and hundreds of years since that minister disappeared." And by this time, a whole crowd of young boys had appeared, and they were laughing at the man in his strange clothes and his horse that was out of order, and the funny way that he spoke, because he didn't speak the way they do. And he goes, come round, I've got a sermon to tell you, come round. And they laughed all the more at him. And he went and he stepped off that horse. You see, as he was stepping off that horse, he suddenly remembered what the heed had told him. "Take that black bag with you and put it on the ground before you step down." And he remembered too late. And whenever his foot hit the ground, he just turned into a pile of dust. And that is my story about the heed.
Oh, thank you so much, Phil. That's lovely. It really is lovely. So can I ask you, where did you hear that story from first?
I didn't hear it. I heard it in an Aberdeen University book, Sheila Douglas book, I think it is. The King of the Dark Arts, and it's a collection of travellers' tales from the northeast of Scotland.
Yeah, so I think I heard it.
Yeah,
there was an old friend of mine called Stanley Robinson.
Yeah, well, that would be the same family. Yeah.
Yes, I heard it from him. Right, the ones I'm going to go. I've got 11 participants and I've got 7 people, so I'm going to go with the ones I can see. So we're staying it where it's really rainy and wet up in the Highlands. Diana, tell me, is it really raining where you are?
Yes, it is actually. Yeah. Short notice you get rain, 1 minute sunshine, the next second it can be rain. So that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, so it's been really hot. Well, it's hot for us. It's 30 odd today around here, but they say it's going to be 40 tomorrow. We're hitting this big heat wave.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, over to the Highlands, where they say all the women are born beautiful and stay beautiful for the whole of their lives. Stanley Robinson always told me that.
Okay, right. It's the year of Scottish stories, so I've been learning more Scottish stories, and this is a little one that I'm sure some of you have heard anyway. But anyway, there was a young lad called Tam, and he stayed with his parents in Aberdeenshire, and they had a croft, and it was quite a long time ago. So it was kind of hand-to-mouth existence. They'd make crops on the land, and then they would grow vegetables. But the thing that he had, or that the family had, was a milking cow. And a milking cow, as everyone knows, in those days was worth an awful lot of money because it provided milk. And from the milk, you could make butter and cheese. And if you had enough for yourself, then you could sell the butter and cheese, and you could use the milk in the cooking. A milking cow was a grand asset. They had some hens as well, and the hens would lay the eggs. But the milking cow, well, in those days, people didn't have pets because nobody could afford a pet or the luxury of a pet. But Brownie the cow was as good a pet as it was a very useful member of the family. And he'd been part of their family for a long, long time. And Tam, the young son, was about 19. And true to form, because he stayed in the Highlands, he was good looking, he was smart, he was well behaved, he was adventurous, he was a very wonderful guy indeed. Anyway, he would help his mum and dad as much as he possibly could. And they were getting older now, so they needed that bit more help. Whatever he could do, he would turn his hand to. And he also liked just to be out in the outdoors as much as he possibly could. Well, this particular day, his mum went to the byre where the cow would be. And she came back and her face was all ashen, and she says, "Oh no, they've taken Brownie the cow. I don't know where Brownie the cow is." So the dad and the mum and the young lad Tam all went looking round about anywhere they thought that the cow could possibly be. But they came back all together and no one had found the cow. And this was a disaster. Well, it was decided between the mum and the dad that Tam would go, and he would go further afield and just see if he could find the cow. And this seemed a grand idea because Tam was a lot fitter and stronger than his mum and his dad. And his mum even made him sandwiches and gave him a bottle of water to take with him. Because it might just take a wee while, because you never quite know what is going to happen in the Highlands. So off he set. And he went down by the river and then to the forest, and he had a look round there. And no, there was no sign of Brownie the cow. And he went to the other side where there were stepping stones across a small stream, and took it over a bridge and down by a clearing. And he looked all around, but he couldn't see the cow, and there was no sound. And then he started shouting, "Brownie, Brownie!" And there was no mooing sound came back. And he kept on, and he worked further on, and he did it again, "Brownie!" And he would listen, but all he could hear was his own voice on the wind. What was he going to do? He couldn't go back empty-handed. Anyway, he travelled on a bit more, and he looked up, and there on the hillside, there was a big cave. And he just wondered, since it was a warm day, if Brownie the cow might be in this cave where it was cool. So he climbed up, and when he went in, his eyes had to adjust from the bright light to the darkness of the cave. And he looked all around. And right at the back, there was Brownie. Oh, he was ecstatic. He was so excited. But the funny thing was, this cow was tied, and the knots were very intricate. And it took him a long, long time to untie all the threads and get them so that he could actually use the rope and lead Brownie back. And he thought to himself, somebody was going to come back for this cow. Maybe somebody had stolen Brownie, Brownie being such a great asset to any family round about. But anyway, he put on the rope and he held the other end. And before they set off, Brownie would have some grass. And well, Tam, he sat down and he had his sandwiches. And he had a glass of water. And it was such a lovely day. He thought, this is great. All my problems are solved now. We've just really got to walk home. And it won't take us that long now. But then there was a funny, strange thing. He heard some rumbling noises and some well, he wasn't quite sure what it was, but it was strong. And then there were all this rippling effect as well that seemed to spread out from the noise. And what could it be? He looked around, but he couldn't see anything. But then the cracks started to appear on the ground right about him. And he thought, what on earth could this be? And he looked over in the distance and he saw two people, but they weren't normal people. They were huge. Well, one was quite a bit bigger than the other, and they were running. And not much wonder, the ground was crumbling. These were giants. And what was he going to do? He managed to find Brownie. He wasn't going to lose it again. And he tried to move off to the side and he just couldn't think what to do next. When Brownie said, because Brownie was a very special cow, very much in tune with Tam, because Brownie had grown up with Tam. And he says, take a hair from my tail and lay it down on the ground. And so Tam did, even though he thought this was really strange. And he's still panicking because the ground is still cracking. And these guys are coming and coming and coming and getting larger and larger in front of his very eyes. But just at the last minute, Brownie says, make this into a river so deep and so wide that only a bird can cross over safely. And so that's what happened. There was this huge swirling river and the giants were at one side and Tam and Brownie were at the other and they couldn't cross. No, they couldn't cross. And Tam thought, great. And he thought he was going to be on his way. But just at the last minute, he looked round and he noticed that the smaller giant had gone off to get a bull. Not just any bull, a giant bull, a huge giant bull. And all it was concentrating on was sucking up all the water until all the water was gone and there was not a drop left. And there was no barrier between the giants and Tam and Brownie. Oh my goodness, what were they going to do? But again, Brownie said, take a hair from my ear, place it on the ground. And he said, this time, he asked for a fire to come, a huge fire that replaced where the river had been. And it was crackling and spitting all over the place. And there was absolutely no way that the giants could cross it. But then that small giant seemed to be pretty smart, actually. He went and got the bull. And the bull still had all the water. And then the bull spat it all out. And it quenched the fire. And there was no more fire left. And so, what was going to happen now? But Brownie said quickly, Tam, take a hair from my back and place it down. And so he did. And this time, Brownie made it into a huge mountain range with tall peaks, so vast, circling all the way round, so tall that only a bird could cross it, but certainly not the giants. And Tam thought, At last we are safe. But then this little giant that seemed to be smarter than the other one, went off and got a drill and gave it to the big one, and the big one started drilling all the way through. And he was so fast at doing it as well. He was going at it so quickly. He managed to get a hole on the other side, and he could see Tam, and he could see Brownie. And he was in such a desperate hurry. He kept the drill going, and he pushed himself in and pushed himself in and elbowed his way in and elbows his way further in through the hole, until actually he was well and truly stuck. He couldn't go forward and he couldn't go back. He was stuck. There was nothing he could do about it. And so the small giant, the one with the bit of mouse, the one that was actually smarter than the big one, thought to himself that he could do very well without this big giant. And off he went and just left them there stuck. And Tam and Brownie went home to a hero's welcome. Thank you.
Talk about a flavour from the Scott Highlands. Thank you very much, Dan. That was beautiful. Right. So, Mike, I can see you now, but I couldn't see you before. Are you wanting to tell a story? You have to unmute yourself, my friend.
Absolutely. I'd be very happy to. I've been inspired this evening to remember a story of someone who was in the Highlands and enjoyed hospitality in the Highlands. His name was Archibald Campbell, and he stayed with a MacDonald. And it was on the night of February the 12th, 1692. And he'd been staying with them for nearly a week, enjoying their Highland hospitality. And they'd had a bit of a do at the weekend. And the MacDonald involved was really, really good on the fiddle. And he'd played wonderful tunes. And this particular night, the Campbell clansman said to him, "Oh, you know, MacDonald, I'm sorry for the accent. The people who know real accents will see how bad it is, but we'll give it a go. Do you know, MacDonald, if I had a fine fiddle like you have, this very night, I'd be up on the mountains playing dance tunes for my whole family." And MacDonald accepted the suggestion, and he went up on the mountains and he played fiddle tunes, and he took his family with him, and they all had a bit of a do up on the mountain. And they didn't come back till the end of the next day to discover that their clan chief, MacDonald of Glencoe, had been slaughtered, along with 33 more men, 2 women, 2 children. And that was how that particular Campbell repaid the hospitality that he received from MacDonald the fiddler. Thank you.
Yes, I've heard that story before, I must admit, and it's a powerful story of friendship. It really is. Yeah.
I have a confession, guys. I don't know if you'll want to hear this, but my maiden name is Campbell. So.
Do you wear the tartan?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Yeah,
but when I was in primary 7 at school, the teachers told the story of the massacre of Glencoe, and there was one MacDonald and one Campbell, as in me, in the class. And I was sent to Coventry for a week, you know?
It could have been worse. It could have been Wolverhampton.
Well, so Diana, my wife is a Rutherford.
Okay.
So she can wear the clans, the colours of the Rutherfords. So we've said to Jake, who's my son, that when he was 18, we gave him a kilt. And when he came up to that didn't go down well. that did not go down well. Okay. So I've got 11 participants and I can see 8 people. And so everybody who wanted to tell a story should have been able to tell a story by now, I think. If there's anybody out there listening who wants to drop in and tell a story, now is the time to speak. If not, I'm going to call it. It's been a really hot day here, even though it is raining again in Scotland. Lucy, what do you think? You sit there all day in the middle of London and it's raining in Scotland. They have all the luck sometimes, don't they?
Yes, it's very hot in here, and it's nice that you have rain. You know?
Yeah. So Baba from the States, and Mike, where are you sat today?
Sweltering in Reading, down in England.
Yeah, and Claire, you've just popped back on again. Hello.
It's pretty warm here, but warm for upstate New York is very different from warm in.
Oh, you're wobbling a bit.
We're having a bit of a heat wave here in Washington, D.C. That and all the pollution from Congress. But Mike, you and I are a bit amiss. We have to. I'll remind people that come Tuesday is Young International Storytelling Day at see, I know at my time, 12 noon my time. That's 5 p.m. British time. And what do we have happening on Friday?
Sarah Lloyd Winder.
That's right. And she's fabulous. You know, she'll winder you up with her tales. Yes.
Yeah.
I know. So I just wanted to get that in real quick.
I can tell you something, Baba, that if you think you're in a mess for your politics, you want to come and live in the UK at the moment. Okay.
No. But see, at least, okay, so right now, both United Kingdom and United States are having a challenge with the word united. But I trust that will all work out.
Well, a challenge with the word democracy.
Oh, yes. Most deaf. Because we have a political party that's not interested in democracy at all. At all.
Yeah, well, if we're going to get into politics, we'll have to do that not on my storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay. So
thanks very much, Mike. Goodbye,
we don't
everybody.
do politics here. So it's lovely to see you all. I'm going to go and sit on the deck and then listen to some folk music from all of the British and Irish Isles, is how we call it now, Baba. And I open a bottle of Plonk, probably. Lucy, it's lovely to meet you again. I hope you can find time to come and join me here again every other Sunday at 7 o'clock. And when we meet, we have to say hello to each other. Okay. Good night, everybody. Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Bill, could you wait?
To be continued.
To be continued. Good night. Good night.